Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We are back. And it's it's a beautiful day outside, sun's shining, and we had a great service. And so it's good to be together with you today. And I don't know if you realize it, but um, yesterday was the 10th of Tebet. It was a fast day. And I think last week I recommended if you weren't familiar with those four fasts that Zechariah mentioned, um, that you could go back in the archives on the YouTube channel and you could pull up at least there's two at least I know that are available to the general public on um, where those fasts originated and what they have to do with us today in terms of when we fast, what should we be praying for. And a couple of years ago, in fact, it was, I believe, the summer before October 7th of 23, I took a little side trail and did a topic I called the Wars of Kings. And in the Wars of Kings, we went over the 10 siege tactics um, that are recorded in scripture. And spiritually, what were the implications of the Wars of Kings? What were the implications of each of these kinds of siege? And as it turned out, it was a great preparation, for what happened in the land of Israel on October 7th. And as we were having to deal with it, making our way out, it made sense in hindsight why we took that little I don't want to call it a rabbit trail. I don't want to diminish it at this point. I think it was a necessary trail that we took. It was preparation we needed to understand what was blowing up around us, essentially. But we know that significant events are commemorated by these four fasts, not just the appointed times, but that typically not very good events. These are commemorating bad events in the history of Israel. But we're also reminded that they will be turned into days of joy in the time to come. But what we've noticed is there is a pattern historically that, again, not so good things can happen on these particular dates. There's some sort of groove in history that these dates are warning us about. And of course, the big one that got my attention concerning these four fasts was COVID. When I was looking at the dates, when the World Health Organization declared COVID a thing, and we saw that it fell on the 10th of Tebet, and we saw that, yeah, literally a worldwide siege had set in, a siege of plague. And so, of course, this week I was looking to see, okay, historically, what's going on? What do we know is happening on the 10th of Tebet? And then what might happen that we don't know about. And so as the day grew closer, I knew of one important historic event that was going to happen on the 10th of Tebet, but I wasn't really sure how that fit into the scheme of prophecy. I mean, I'm sure that it does somehow, but it wasn't that apparent to me. I could not tell because sometimes if you'll notice, this in terms of the siege, the event can either kick off a new version of a siege, or sometimes it can reverse it. It can knock the siege in the other direction. In other words, those who thought to have put Israel under siege find themselves under siege. He can turn the tables in some years. And so the particular event that I knew was coming up yesterday on the 10th of Tebet, I wasn't sure how that factored in. Was that the end of a siege or was that the beginning of a siege? And sometimes you can't tell because history has to move on before you'll have enough hindsight to be able to tell. So I still don't know the answer to that. It remains to be seen whether it was the end or the beginning of another siege. But what I did see clearly is that Los Angeles is burning, and it's burning right now. It's still burning. And we know that fire, as we went through that mini lesson on the wars of kings and the siege tactics of the kings, that fire, of course, factors in. And so one of the things on my to-do list, because it's not like just another wildfire. This is a unprecedented fire. It's not just Santa Ana winds. If you've looked on the weather diagrams of how the winds were blowing that created this, well, I don't know if they created it. I don't know who started it, but fanned the flames. You can start a fire, but until you fan the flames, you're not going to have a wildfire. And so there's two factors. How did it start? And then we know the second factor, which is the fanning of it, that it's, what the insurance company would call an act of God. It's not normal in terms of its intensity. And so that answered my question about what's under siege. Clearly, Los Angeles is under siege. The area around Los Angeles, and it still remains to be seen how much of it will be destroyed by the fire. So I hope that you're keeping the residents of California, especially in these areas, in prayer. I hope that there's an intercession on our part. Just like Abraham, he knew fire and brimstone was coming to the 5 cities of the valley, but nevertheless, he interceded even for Sodom and Gomorrah. And so if he can intercede for Sodom and Gomorrah, then certainly we can intercede for the sake of our brothers and sisters who are located in that area. Because I have friends there. I don't know if I still have family there or not. I did at one point, and I'm not sure, it's been a long time. So, clearly not family I keep in touch with. And I haven't lived there since I was 7, but I'm recognizing some of those neighborhoods. They're definitely ringing a bell. And so we do want to pray that there would be not just a deliverance of the righteous from this siege of fire, but they would draw many to repentance. That whatever the reason, however it started, whyever the flames were fanned, that instead of just resulting in destruction, that repentance and salvation would be what goes out of these ashes. I think that's important. I think it's much more important than trying to assign blame. Certainly, when we're talking about repentance, we have to know the places where we went wrong in order to do better. But in this case, we just pray that there would be a spiritual revival that would grow out of these ashes. That would be my prayer for that area there. And any family that I've forgotten about that I don't know, that I haven't had contact with. So let's talk about, let's continue our discussion, right? Okay. Continuing our discussion from last week, and really this week is just a continuation of last week. It's not really a new topic. What I realized is when I was working on the newsletter day before yesterday, that what I had covered in class that was subsequent to last week's teaching was very extensive. And we're just talking about one of the classes. If there was no way to put the material from two classes in the newsletter. And then I was like, even one class, that's way too much. It's long, it's intense, and I think very rich. So what I did is I just isolated the first part of that second lesson because it seemed to me it had more continuity with last week. Right. So that's where we'll pick up. What we're doing is in these last few lessons, we've been dealing with the relationship between the bride and the bridegroom. And we know that, of course, when we stand at the mountain, at Mount Sinai, and we say, we will do and we will hear, that this is a step beyond our salvation. This is the natural outgrowth of our salvation when he brought us out of Egypt. So now he brings us to the mountain. He's forming us into a people, and we're going to be a people of rules, boundaries, laws, just like there was in the Garden of Eden. There were rules, there were boundaries, there were laws. And if you want to dwell in peace in that garden, or if you want to dwell in peace within that nation, then you will learn to observe the rules, the boundaries, the laws of the bridegroom. And so in between Mount Sinai, where we say we will do and we will hear, where we are betrothed, and then Yeshua's return for the bride, which will be considered the completion of the betrothal period. The conclusion of the betrothal period is one called kiddushin, or holiness. And so when Yeshua draws us up into the cloud to be in his presence forever, that's where we might say the marriage of two realms is taking place. So in this interim period, we've been working with a passage out of Song of Songs, chapter 4, where he says, you are like an orchard, you're like the shoots of an orchard of pomegranates. And we know that the pomegranates represent the commandments. The pips of the pomegranates represent the 613 commandments. And so it's traditional for the bridegroom to send gifts to his bride during the betrothal period while they're waiting. They've already made their marriage agreement, and now they're waiting for the time. Just like Yeshua said, I'm going to prepare a place for you, that where I am, you may be also. And so ultimately, when he returns and draws us into that cloud, that where he's prepared the place, ideally, we would have also spent that time preparing. It's not like we're just sitting on our hands waiting for Yeshua to come back. He's asked us to prepare as well. And he left with us his word, his Torah, the pomegranates. And so he sends gifts of pomegranates, which means he sends the gifts of his word so we can begin to learn about his character. And how we live out that word is going to be our gift back to him. And then he can learn our character. We learn his character through his word. How we respond to his word tells him about our character. It's that transaction. Right? So we might just call it the gift exchange between the bride and the bridegroom, because in that betrothal period, the bride sends gifts to the bridegroom, the bride turns around and he sends gifts back to the bride. And so in last week's lesson, we looked at how the bride brought in resources from the natural realm in order to build the Mishkan, which is the tabernacle in the wilderness. Israel wanted his presence to descend and to dwell with them. And so their hearts were moved with a desire. They've had this marriage agreement at Mount Sinai, and now they're longing for his presence to dwell with them in a more powerful way. Up to this time, it's been doing miracle, 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 but there's more interaction when his presence dwells in your midst. And that's what they're seeking, a more intense immersion into his presence. And so last week we looked at a list of 13 items that the bride brought to the bridegroom in order to build this Mishkan. She brought earthly natural resources of gold, silver, copper, turquoise wool, purple wool, scarlet wool, linen, goat hair, red-dyed ram skins, tachash skins, which might be porpoise, badger, or even an animal that's not even, might be extinct, acacia wood, shoham stones, and the stones, the precious stones for the settings. Now, what's not included in that list of 13 is going to be items they brought that were depletable, such as the olive oil and the spices for anointment. Those had to be recharged. But the more permanent gifts, those were the 13 that the bride brought to the bridegroom. And in turn, because again, the bride brings these natural resources, things that are sourced from the earth itself, or the creation itself, we see that the bridegroom responds, and he divinely endows these two men named Bezalel and Aholiab with a divine spirit, with wisdom, understanding, and knowledge it's sourced from the heavenly realm. He says, okay, you bring me things you've sourced from the earthly realm, things that are valuable to you below, and I'm going to endow you with something valuable from above, which is my Holy Spirit. And so he pours out a great measure of his Holy Spirit upon Bezalel and Aholiab so that they can take these natural products, infuse the creativity, because we know Elohim is a creative spirit. Elohim, he's the creator, created everything we see around us in the natural realm. And with his spirit, they create the beautiful things of the Mishkan. So you see the pattern set right there. The bride brings the natural gifts, and the bridegroom responds with spiritual gifts. She brings beautiful things, valuable things, and the bridegroom responds with a beautiful, valuable thing from the heavenlies, the Ruach HaKodesh, specifically with the Chokhmah, Bina, and Da'at, which is wisdom, understanding, and knowledge of knowing how to transform. It takes the natural product and transforms it. And that's going to be the pattern again. Yes, it's not just that we bring natural resources and he responds with spiritual resources, but he takes the natural resource and beautifies it with the spiritual resource. What we think is valuable, he responds and it becomes even more valuable. And so what the bridegroom sends back to the bride is going to be a similar gift. If it was selected for beauty and value, he will respond with a gift that has a beauty and value. And so each one of the gifts that he gave back to her mirrors one of the gifts that she has brought to him, because she desires to make a place for his presence to dwell. Because, bringing the most valuable things, it's like Abel. He brought the best of his flock. He wanted to draw near. He wanted a speedy acknowledgement of the value of his offering so he could be nearer sooner. Because if he rejects the offering, it's going to take longer. You're going to have to go back and resource. Cain didn't want to go back and resource. He just, did not bring the best. He just says he brought the fruit of the ground. He didn't bring the most valuable things from his garden. And therefore, his offerings rejected. And he says, you know what to do. All you really need to go do is go back and resource the best vegetables from your garden. If that's what you're going to bring the best, bring the finest wheat, bring the finest barley, bring the finest figs, whatever it is you're going to bring, source that which has the greatest value to you and bring it back. But it takes longer when you're doing a do-over. So when the bride brings the best the first time, there's a sense of urgency, like speedily come back. Because remember, we just had a golden calf thing that happened. They're desiring his presence now. And so by bringing the best the first time, you're giving him the opportunity to also respond speedily with that valuable return of gift. And so Ezekiel 16:10-14 describes the 13 items or attributes, spiritual attributes, that Adonai responds to Israel with, the spiritual gifts that he gives back to her. And we read those last week. So just to review those 13, he says, I gave you embroidered cloth, just like the Mishkan, tachash sandals. Tachash was in the Mishkan. Fine linen, just like the Mishkan. Ornaments, just like the Mishkan. Bracelets, which were thought to represent the tablets of the 10 words. And the original tablets, by the way, were thought to have been made of sapphire. A necklace, again, mirroring the words of the Torah bound around the neck and the heart. A nose ring representing justice, and earrings. Which there were lots of rings, by the way, in the Mishkan. A crown of beauty, echoing the crown of the high priest. Gold, representing the purity of the Torah. Silver, representing the redemption. Fame, which is the fame of the groom's name. They bear his name. And then silk is one thing you say, I don't see that where that was in the tabernacle. Well, the silk, because it isn't one of the specific things, is thought to represent the cloud of glory that covered Israel in the wilderness. Remember, there was a pillar of smoke and fire that led them around or that would settle down. But this cloud is a different one that Paul refers to when he says we were all under the cloud. And so being under that cloud is thought to be represented by the silk because it's soft, it's billowy, it's practically weightless. And it is probably the finest of all fabrics is going to be silk. So that supernatural quality represented by the cloud and the things that happened in that cloud. Clothes didn't wear out, shoes didn't wear out. There was miraculous food, there was miraculous water. Aaron's rod budded. All sorts of miraculous things happened under that cloud. And so, yes, it was a very fine gift that the bridegroom gave back to the bride. And that's showing us again the pattern. The bride brings her earthly gifts, and the bridegroom matches them with spiritual gifts. The bride brings earthly resources, and the groom mirrors them with heavenly resources. And so we have to understand that there's two realms. This whole picture, this whole gift exchange is teaching us about two realms. So the bride is going to understand that the bridegroom is her creator. He made her. She is created. And therefore, the gifts that she gives to him really aren't hers at all. if we go back to the story, remember, it was only because of the plagues and the pressure that Adonai applied upon the Egyptians that the Hebrews were able to plunder them and ask for the silver and the gold and all the precious things that they took out of Egypt. So by divine design, he redesignated the wealth of the Egyptians to the Hebrews. So even the gifts that Israel generates to give him, he created them. It's all his. And that's part of the pattern. Adonai puts wealth in our pockets. So we can't think when we're contributing something to the building of the congregation, when we're contributing something to the well-being of the congregation, that it's coming out of our pockets. It's coming out of his creation. It didn't come out of our pockets. It came out of his creation first. We didn't invent money. We didn't invent silver and gold. We didn't invent all these fabrics. It came out of his creation. And remember, we only listed the 13 items that were fairly permanent. The fabrics, the minerals, the precious stones, the coverings. But remember, there were other items like the olive oil or the particular spices for the incense that weren't counted because they were depletable. They had to be renewed from day to day. Well, it's the same principle. When we contribute to a congregation, it's not like, oh, look, I found this nice group of people. I'm going to contribute something to the building of this congregation, then I'm done. I'm done. I contributed something, I'm done. No, actually, it was all Israel that was supposed to bring the olive oil. And possibly in future lessons, it depends on how deeply we want to jump into it on the live stream. But even the spices for the incense, where did it come from? Well, it's thought to have grown miraculously beside the streams of the living water, of that miraculous rock, that Edenic qualities were attached to that miraculous water. And therefore, just like Jonah's gourd that grew up overnight, or Aaron's rod that budded overnight, that the spices that were needed for the tabernacle, or the grapes that were needed for the wine libations, that these things just miraculously grew beside the streams of the water. And so they would have to be continually sourced. As they burned through olive oil, they would have to bring more olive oil. So that means they'd have to go out and collect it, crush it, prepare it. And as they ran out of spices, they would have to go and harvest more spices in order to replenish it. And so when we become part of a congregation, we're not there to be a spectator. We are there to contribute continually to the well-being and the sustaining of the daily workings of that congregation. Just because there's no working temple or tabernacle does not mean that we are not supposed to learn from the patterns. Just like it said Yeshua, it was his custom to go to the synagogue every Shabbat. He didn't sit back and say, well, I was the word of creation. I think I'm done contributing. Regardless of how good or how mean they were to him on any given Shabbat, he showed up. He showed up somewhere in a synagogue somewhere. He continued to participate. And this is part of building a congregation. We don't bring one gift. We don't bring one sacrifice and say, we're done. There's something that we need to be thinking about what we contribute on a daily basis. I mean, you say, well, I don't even have a congregation. The only way I can connect with people is on the internet. Well, then, if that's your congregation, contribute to it in some way. Join the prayer group. Get involved in the ministry itself that you joined yourself to. Figure out a way to serve. Figure out a way to give good gifts, because you see that was kind of the breakdown with Korach and his rebels. They were looking at all the stuff that people were bringing in for the benefit of building the Mishkan, and rather than seeing it as servicing the community, they felt like the Levites and the priests were profiting from it, that it was for their personal profit. They turned it into a business transaction. And so when covetousness enters into the equation, things are going to go sideways. When you think you made that, it's going to go sideways. Remember, it's coming out of his creation, and it's being sent back to the bridegroom via, in his system, people who function as messengers, pastors, rabbis, apostles, the people who are doing the work of the congregation, because to the natural eye, it looks like giving money to the person. There's something that says, well, no, I want to give it directly to God. And I'm like, well, go ahead, give it directly to him. I want to watch while you do that. Just call me up when you're ready. I want to watch you write a check to God. That would be an interesting thing for me to see. I've never seen anything like that before. But starting from the time I was very young, till when I first understood what a check was or what money was, I saw my mom and dad contribute writing checks and putting them into an offering plate or an offering box or an offering basket. I saw them prepare food for visiting ministers. I saw them have pastors over for suppers and lunches. I saw them prepare food to take to the congregate. I saw them maybe doing yard work for the pastor or a needy person. I saw them contributing all sorts of things. It's like the olive oil never ran out in their lives. My dad even drove a Sunday school bus, which I didn't even know about until his funeral. Somebody told me how he would just faithfully get out in that bus and try to find kids who would ride that bus to Sunday school. And, I heard the testimonies of grown people who said they were saved as children because he got out there in that bus. And so whatever your hand can find to do, you have to keep doing it. Just like the olive oil, you have to replenish it. The incense, it has to be replenished. You can't pray one time and be done. You have to pray continually. And so yes, you can give this great gift, to build something, but then it's your continued participation that's, I believe, truly going to pour out spiritual riches upon that congregation. Because think of if he gives things back in like kind, if what Israel gave in the natural realm, he returned in the spiritual realm, it wasn't a different kind of gift. It mirrored the natural gift. So what do you want from heaven is the question. What do you want for him right now? Right, you're going to have to write that check. And it's probably going to have to be given to a human being. And it might be a literal check, or it might be pushing a lawnmower. What do you need? I need this kind of help. Try to think, like, how can I give a gift to him? I know what kind of gift I would like to have. Now I have to be prepared. He may not give me the gift back that I think I'm going to get. In my mind, it might be framed this way. He might see it as a similar gift very differently than I do. But I have to understand that I'm just giving back to him what is his. He even has to give me the ability to earn that money. He has to give me the ability to earn that gift. See, if he didn't even give us the ability to earn, we couldn't even bring it. We might want to, but we wouldn't have the ability to do it. There's lots of people on this earth who do not have the ability to earn anything at all. There's many people with disabilities. There's many poor people. There's some people, they can only earn a little bit of money. They're literally paycheck to paycheck. Or as my mom used to say, they're from hand to mouth. But if we were born with the ability to go out and earn, to labor, and collect a paycheck, that in itself is a gift from heaven. Not everybody can. And I know it's hard because we're brought up to believe that we earn our paychecks. And so maybe we should start teaching children younger. Yes, you're going to earn a paycheck, but you need to always understand that without the gift of the Creator, you wouldn't even have the ability to do that. If He has made us able-bodied, if He has kept us healthy, it's so we can give back to Him. He has gifted us with the ability to give to Him so that He can give more to us. So did I earn the paycheck, or did it actually originate in the creation that He made? And then He gave me the ability to take from His creation and then to turn around and take those most valuable things I could find in His creation and my ability to earn or to labor, select those most valuable things and give them back to Him. Now, He lets you put it in your pocket like it's yours. Maybe that's where we get off track. Like, it's got my name on it and it's in my pocket, so that's my paycheck. And He'll let you think that way, act that way if you want to. But we can't get too sassy. He created us, and He created the earth that's yielding its resources to us. And that's a little hard for us to acknowledge when we're associating the reward with the work that we do. And yes, we contribute. We contribute our natural resources to that paycheck. And you're taking some of that treasure in that paycheck and you're giving it back to Him. And what's going to happen when you do that? It's going to make it holy. It's going to be designated. So there's a portion of your paycheck, or there is a portion of your labor that if you choose to live with this transaction between the bride and the bridegroom, a portion of that is going to be designated, set aside for Him. Just like the bride is set aside for the bridegroom. She's holy to the bridegroom. She's designated to him alone. She is not permitted to any other. She's betrothed. No other one can touch her. She's designated, set apart, holy. So when you take part of your income, part of your treasure, your wealth, and you designate it for Him, it's for Him alone. I don't know how and how much detail you read the Torah regulations concerning holy things, but when an item, like say a bag of wheat, a basket of grapes, a bag, of nuts, or a basket of fruits, if there's something you have designated for a gift to the temple, Should someone even accidentally eat out of that basket, they have stolen from the Holy One because it was designated, it was holy, it could only be used for that purpose. So you stole. There's going to have to be a reckoning. And so you're going to have to bring a guilt offering. You actually, it's not a matter of just, oops, I made a mistake, sorry. You actually have to do something because you ate something that did not belong to you. It was designated. It was a transaction between this person, this bride, and this bridegroom. And so it's like, you walk by and you saw, oh, what a pretty wedding cake. And you didn't realize it was a wedding cake. And you said, let me cut me a slice of this cake. It just looks delicious. And you didn't know who it belonged to. He says, okay, I understand you didn't cut into the cake, out of any ill intent, but you're going to have to restore something because you violated the meal. The bride and the bridegroom, it was designated for them for their wedding. And so here's how you make it right. If you were to do that accidentally, then there's never any thought, that you would actually do it on purpose. Now, what would override that? Can it be done? If, say, it's a matter of life and death? Yes, it can. Because remember, the commandment to save life overrides most commandments. Now, there's a few things you can't do. You can't just commit adultery because somebody's threatening your life. You don't do that. But most of the commandments can be overridden with the commandment to preserve life. Just like, King David, he took the holy bread and ate it. He was in dire need, but there still had to be a reckoning, right? There still had to be a reckoning for that transaction because that holy bread, it's an offering. It's on the table between the bride and the bridegroom. So when you take something and you designate it, just like the bread of faces, the bread of the presence, that's not just any flour and water and yeast. It's holy flour, holy water, holy yeast. Once it's designated to that service, it isn't for just anybody to eat unless it's a life and death situation. It's not secular, it's not mundane, it doesn't belong on a grocery shelf. It's a holy offering. So when you designate your tithe and you say, I understand there's no temple, but it's my job to repent in the place of my exile so he can bring me back. So I have to start doing something to demonstrate to him that I no longer have the stinginess sticking to me that caused originally us to be kicked out of the land. That doesn't stick on me anymore. And so I'm going to be generous. I'm going to make sure I designate my tithe. I'm going to be sure that I designate holy offerings because the whole earth is his. It's not really mine. But I have the opportunity to designate what he's put into my hand, not somebody else's. You can't do it with stolen property. You can't worship with a stolen lulav. But even though it's all his, he imagined a transaction like a bride and a bridegroom. We are unique in his creation. So the moment that we take from what he's put into our hand and we set it aside and designate it to give back to him, it becomes a holy thing, not to be touched by anyone else. That template, that pattern, and his way that he imagined it, he says, okay, I'm going to make this unique creation. I don't need more angels, got plenty of angels. Don't want more of those. Don't need demons. I want human beings. And so these human beings, they're going to be an incredible creation. They're going to be made out of earth And then I'm going to knit a soul together in them. And then I'm going to breathe my spirit into them. So they're going to be a unique creation. They're going to be partly of this earth and partly of heaven. And so in that sense, they will be similar to the animals and they will be similar to the angels, but they won't be either. And so I'm going to put them on this earth and give them the opportunity to acknowledge me as the creator of that earth and even them. And in this transaction, they're going to gather the valuable things that I give them from this earth. They're going to designate it back to me. And then it's going to be elevated to this holy status. And it's going to complete the circle back to me. The Creator wants you to complete the circle back to Him. So often it breaks down because we don't understand what He saw when He created us, that He would initiate this circle of giving, this gifting, that He would form us out of the earth, put things into our hands, and then we would take those things and we would designate a portion back to Him, and it comes back in the circle. The created goes back to the Creator, and then He says, now I can pour out more. I give you more ability to take the treasures of the earth, and you designate more of those treasures and give back to Him. And He says, oh, I love this. I love the way this marriage works. And so now He says, I gift more ability back to you to derive from the treasures of the earth, and we take and we designate that, and now that's holy, and we give the holy portion back to Him, and He loves it. He loves that whole process. That's what we were created to do. And so for some reason, there's believers out there. Believers. I don't even want to talk about unbelievers. You can't fix that. But believers who choose not to give gifts to their Creator. Those who want to be counted among the bride who choose not to give gifts to the bridegroom during their betrothal. Or they're only going to give sparingly. Even though they have enough, He has put enough ability, He has put enough bounty in their hands. It's not like, they're being asked to give something they don't have. They do have. They do have ability. And so even though they have enough to do so, they're like Cain. They kind of limit what they want to give back to the bridegroom. And so if the pattern is He takes those valuable things that you designate to Him and then He pours out again, then they're doing something very short-sighted. They're saying, I love things, and I love things so much that I'm going to withhold my best things and give Him just a few things that aren't so much a treasure. But like, if you did want things, wouldn't you give Him the best things? Because that's His pattern. He gives even better back to you. Because His are derived from spiritual realms. And I think part of that is we see the natural thing as more valuable than the spiritual thing, when actually it's the spiritual riches that are more valuable than the earthly riches. And that's the thing. I mean, it's knowing that it's a reciprocal thing. This gift giving works in a circle. So they're cutting off His ability. I mean, according to His template and according to His pattern, they're cutting off His ability to shower them with spiritual riches that make anything they might have designated to Him look pretty shabby in comparison. And worse yet, there's the non-workers. There's actually I bought a book with that because I had a concern about a particular family member. just couldn't hold a job, never could hold a job. And I'm like, what's going on with it? And somebody said, there's actually a classification that psychologists use, and these people are called non-workers. They have the ability to earn, they have the ability to work, and they might even be believers. But they've established a life pattern of either not working at all or being such a lousy worker that they know they're going to be fired. They know they're not going to be able to hold a job because they're lousy on purpose. So they never are able to provide for their families. Well, let's take that back. They never do provide for their families. They are able to provide for their families, but they never do provide for their families. And so if they're not even going to provide for their own families, then they're probably not going to give holy gifts to the Creator. And if they're not going to impart their valuable treasures to the Creator, how is he going to impart valuable treasures from his riches and spiritual places back to them? And that's even worse because, yeah, the stingy believer might be withholding what he has, but the non-worker won't even make anything. He won't even earn anything that could lead to a decision of, do I want to give the best or not the best? I mean, he doesn't even create that opening. The bridegroom wants us fully involved in this gift transaction, which we cannot really do if we're stingy or a non-worker. Now, not all work comes with a traditional paycheck. Some work, it's implicitly, if you're a great housewife, if you're a great mom, it doesn't mean you're a non-worker because there's not a paycheck with somebody's signature on it. Not at all. Or which that's probably the good old days. Okay. Just because there's not a deposit in the bank account, right? No direct deposit nowadays. Just because you don't get a paycheck doesn't mean that you're not a worker. You are a worker, right? You're fully involved in the work of the kingdom. And in some cases, well, probably most cases, nurturing your children and bringing them up is going to be a difficult job. So you're going to share in those resources that are passed on. Maybe your husband is the one who actually makes the paycheck with the signature, but you are one. You are part of that holy designation, that holy transaction. So you shouldn't feel less. In many cases, probably most cases, if you're a stay-at-home mom, especially if you're homeschooling, you're probably working longer, harder hours anyway. You're probably doing more management and administration anyway. So don't feel disconnected from the transaction. You might be even more involved in the gift transaction than the spouse who earns the paycheck. The important thing to remember is be fully involved in the transaction. Be, mindful of the transaction. Because whatever resources you choose to pass on to the kingdom, if they are valuable to you, then you are contributing to the welcoming of his presence. You are trying to draw down his presence faster. You're just like the Israelites. Let's go ahead and bring all this good stuff in there because we need him with us soon. Bo Mashiach, right? Baruch haba b'shem Adonai. Blessed is he who comes. If we want to say a blessing, then we should be doing the things that contribute to his faster return. And when we contribute our earthly resources, we're drawing down his presence. That's how he responds. He's going to respond with similar gifts from the spiritual realm. If our natural gift says, I want you here and I want you here fast, if his people will do that, then he is going to respond with a similar spiritual gift. He says, I'll be there fast. Behold, I come quickly. And in a sense, it's kind of up to us when quickly is. That future temple is the way that the bridegroom imagines his creation. Every creation starts with imagination. So he imagined a creation that would be a fusion of earth and spirit, a perfect fusion of willingly obedient people, not the spiritual being, not more angels, definitely not more demons, but um, a creation that would respond from the earthly side of them so he could respond to them again from the spiritual, that he could marry these two realms. He is spirit, but he desired to be married to his creation in the natural realm, just like you see New Jerusalem coming down. It's from a heavenly source, but it's going to be once again married. The land is even, it says, going to be called married. When once again he's able to descend and to dwell in this holy place that's been purified of its filth. So in that list that Isaiah made of spiritual gifts to the bride, that's the example of how the bridegroom in the interim period of betrothal sends gifts to the bride. And it heightens anticipation because she sends gifts back. That's important. It's interactive. And the more we send gifts and receive gifts and send gifts and receive gifts, it's anticipation. And you'll get to know somebody by the gift. I told the class this week, there was this sweet little old lady I used to know. She would hit the thrift sales and she would pull things out of her closet and they smelled really bad, very moldy. And she would give me these gifts. And I had to pretend like these were the best gifts in the world because they were to her. To her, it was a great treasure that she was giving to me, these used moldy clothes. But because of the heart that was behind it, it was a great treasure to her. And I had to respond that way because of the heart. That was the thing. Their hearts moved in the wilderness to give these valuable gifts. But that's the thing. You don't know when somebody gives you a gift, if it's going to be a gift you actually think is a gift. I mean, when somebody says, "Oh, I brought you this wonderful gift," here you go, unwrap it. If you don't know that person very well, you're a little hesitant about unwrapping it because you don't even know what their idea of a gift is. It might be moldy clothes that they think is a great gift, and then you're going to have to really act surprised and happy and hope you can run that through the wash or something. You don't know when people give you something if their idea of treasure and valuable is the same as yours. But when we do go through those transactions, when we open the gifts of the bridegroom, and when he opens our gifts, it's telling us a lot about each other. We're learning of his nature and character, what he thinks is valuable when we receive a gift from him. We learn what he likes and what he dislikes. And based on what we give to him, he learns a lot about our character. And he kind of knows what gift to give us the next time. Because sometimes he'll give me a gift I'm not real sure about. Some of them I love. They're, what's the word? Splendiferous. They're wondrous. I wouldn't have even imagined to ask for that gift because I didn't even know it existed until he gave it to me. And often it's just some great insight into his word, some unexpected gem. But there's other times he'll give me a gift and I have some reservations about it. Not because it's moldy clothes, but it's a gift horse. And they say don't look a gift horse in the mouth. But sometimes, in the natural world, you better look that gift horse in the mouth because it might be kind of long in the tooth. You might not actually be getting a gift. You might be getting a responsibility. You might be getting a problem and lots of vet bills. But, when he gives us this gift horse, you do know it's going to come with a greater responsibility. It's not any old nag. It might be a beautiful gift horse, but with it is going to come greater responsibility, greater demands, more tests, more trials. And that's the reason it's a gift. Because the tests and the trials you go through for that gift horse, it's going to take you to another level of holiness. It's not because he's unloaded an old nag on you and called it a gift. It's because, yes, that gift horse, it's of great value, but it's going to raise the bar in terms of the effort that you put into the kingdom. It's um, it's beautiful, but it has to take you to a higher level of holiness, because remember, it's a transaction. And the work you have to do and you give back to him, that's designated, that's holy. And because this is a higher responsibility, this is going to be a greater treasure. There's a price to pay for accepting that gift, but who would refuse it? Because the extra responsibility, the extra work, the tests and the trials you're going to go through for it, the effort you put into it, that's a designated holy gift you're giving back to him. And you wouldn't have anything so valuable to give had he not given you that gift horse. He just gave you the opportunity to elevate the level of the treasure you gave to him. Holy treasure. So he says, it's okay to covet a spiritual gift. You're allowed to covet a spiritual gift, but it can come with a huge price, because he's trying to mold you and make you. You're learning the character of the bridegroom, but he's also shaping your character through the gift. They're designed to increase your holiness, because this fusion of heaven and earth that's going to be New Jerusalem, it's going to be a completely holy place. There's going to be many people, Zechariah says, who come up from the nations at the feast, especially for the Feast of Sukkot. But they will come up and visit at these feasts. In the end, they go back home to their own nation. But Isaiah chapter 4, verses 2 through 6, it talks about those who are recorded for life in Jerusalem, not visiting Jerusalem, for life in Jerusalem. It says, in that day, the branch of the Lord will be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth will be the pride and the adornment of the survivors of Israel. It will come about that he who is left in Sion and remains in Jerusalem will be called holy. Everyone who is recorded for life in Jerusalem. When the Lord has washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion and purged the bloodshed of Jerusalem from her midst by the spirit of judgment and the spirit of burning. Then the Lord will create over the whole area of Mount Sion and over her assemblies a cloud by day, even smoke, and the brightness of a flaming fire by night. For over all the glory will be a canopy. There will be a shelter to give shade from the heat by day and refuge and protection from the storm and the rain. This is a gift that the Creator is giving to his bride. She doesn't have to worry about the flaming fire. She doesn't have to worry about the smoke, because there is a supernatural covering over her. She gave a natural gift of supernatural coverings, and she receives a supernatural gift at the resurrection. She can no longer be burned by a harmful fire. She can no longer be harmed by smoke. She won't be harmed by heat. She will have refuge from the heat and the storm. She gave from her natural treasures, and he rewards her with supernatural coverings. But there will be people recorded for life, just life somewhere else. Some people are recorded for life in New Jerusalem. Some will visit there at the appointed times, but they're recorded for life among the nations. The bride is recorded for life in Jerusalem because there's no rebellion in her. She's completely embraced his pomegranate gifts, his mitzvot. She's learned the nature of the bridegroom while she awaited his coming. She has completely embraced his will. There's no vestige, no shred of rebellion left in her that would cause her to violate his will in this extremely holy place. Because the pattern of that is, if you violate his will in an extremely holy place, you get kicked out. So yeah, we can be recorded for life somewhere else, just not in the most holy place. There has to be 100% obedience and submission. When we say we will do and we will hear, it's the agreement of the bride to the bridegroom's conditions of the marriage. Through the power of the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, Yeshua is grooming his bride to conform her will to his and the Father's will. I wrote this down today. It was Pastor Mark read it during the service. It's 2 Corinthians 7:10. Talking about this gift horse that can be a painful horse to deal with. But because he wants you to have greater treasure, he gives you this gift. 2 Corinthians 7:10 says, pain handled God's way produces a turning point from sin to God, which leads to salvation. And there is nothing to regret in that. But pain handled in the world's way produces only death. So if there's some pain that comes with this gift horse, it's going to lead to life. It's going to lead to obedience. He's forming you. He's helping remove the filth from the daughters of Zion so that there's nothing left but the purity of his will in her. Accepting that gift horse, it's really the only way to complete the circle of personal holiness that's required for residence in the New Jerusalem, because it's a place where the natural and the spiritual have this perfectly harmonious marriage. Zechariah 14:20 says, in that day, there will be inscribed on the bells of the horses, holy to the Lord. And the cooking pots in the Lord's house will be like the bowls before the altar. And so the preparation of the bride is for holiness. And so she's preparing, dedicating her earthly work to him, allowing him to turn it into a sacred offering. The bride is transforming more and more into the image of the Creator, just as he imagined. And you say, well, I don't feel like I'm really there yet. What if I were to die before I'm perfect? Well, guess what? There's no what if. You will die before you're perfect. We all will if Yeshua tarries. But at the resurrection, it will be made perfect. As long as you're not one of those people who said, okay, thank you for saving me, but here's all the list of the things in your word that I either will or won't do. These are the disagreements I have with what are in your word. And so you will accept me and give me salvation, but this is the list of deal breakers for me, and I'm just going to continue to do my will. I don't have you recorded for life in New Jerusalem if you appear at the garden gate with a list. But if you acknowledge, Father, there's some things in my heart that they comprise a list of things that I struggle with in your words. But it's not on purpose. I want to yield these things to you. I'm going to need your help. I don't want to appear at your garden gate with the list of my requirements of my Bible. I don't want to write my own word and say, well, these are the commandments according to me. I'm good with you on these, but these right here, okay, I think you can probably still be recorded for life, just not in New Jerusalem. I think you can still be saved. I just don't think that you can conduct yourself as a bride in New Jerusalem because you have put roadblocks in the way for your transformation. But if you admit, I make mistakes, I sin, but once I figure it out, I try to go through that cycle of perfection so that you can take me to increasing levels of holiness. And, wherever I happen to be when I cross over, I know at the resurrection, he will make me perfect because I have no list. I mean, if he says this is wrong, I agree it's wrong. Did I do it? Yeah, I did it. Did I try to fix it? I tried to fix it, but I failed again. All right. I'm going to get real. I'm going to try harder next time. Most of that stuff, if you live long enough, you'll work it out. You'll work it out. But you will never live long enough to be perfect. That final piece, see, we wouldn't need Yeshua if we had the ability to make ourselves perfect. But we rely upon him. We take our treasures of obedience and we give them to him. And we will walk in increasing holiness. And then on that day, what does Paul say? And I think it was even in the same passage in 2 Corinthians, where he talks about, we are sown this natural body, but we are raised a perfect body. So you sow the natural body for his sake. You sow your natural resources, everything he has given to you and put into your hand. You select the most treasured things among that, and you give them to him. And Yeshua says, I'll raise you up a perfect body. You can't outgive me. And that's good news. It's good news on those days when you feel like, am I ever going to conquer this? He knows your heart. He knows your heart. And he knows those rough horses we're having to ride sometimes. He gives us the finest of things. And often our struggle is taking the finest to give back to him. Because it's, I think it was in 8th grade, I had to read The Hobbit. And which I know The Lord of the Rings is a big thing nowadays, but I don't know if it's even the same thing as what I read in school, but there was this ring, that everybody wanted. And Gollum protected this ring, but it's like anybody that had the ring, it did something to you. It's like you thought you were the only person worthy of the ring, that nobody else on earth could possibly take care of that ring like you could. And I think probably for Tolkien, that was a metaphor for the treasures of this world, that Adonai, he might give us the treasures of this world, but we don't want to give it back to him. And I think often because giving back to him means it's probably going to pass through another human being. That effort is probably going to be invested in other human beings. It may not feel like we're writing the check to God. Well, you can't. Run that one through the bank. But can you write checks? Can you give money? Can you give labor? Can you give prayer? Especially time. Can you give those things to other human beings to bring glory to the Holy One? Yes, you can. And so you may as well have written the check to Elohim. 6 hours of my time this week to take so-and-so to her doctor visit and to mow so-and-so's yard, and this much of the money out of my paycheck that I really would like to put a little more into the vacation fund for the kids to go to the beach, but I'm going to put that here, you know, um, how you designate things is what makes it holy. If you're giving it to him, if it came from you and your good intention, once you designate it to him, it's now holy. It's a transaction between you and the bridegroom. No matter whose hand it goes into, it's a transaction between you and the bridegroom. There may not be a high priest standing there to make you feel really wonderful about this gift. There might not be a Levitical choir breaking into song because you gave this gift. You don't need it. If you're waiting for the high priest to clap or the Levitical choir to sing, when you do something good for someone else, you've got some horses to ride, is all I've got to say. You don't need the accolades. You need to understand that you're just completing the circle back to the bridegroom. And he's waiting to pour out spiritual riches on you, even now. Even we can't even imagine the riches that he's holding for us in the future. Even now, we can stop his outpouring of spiritual gifts on us and spiritual riches by being stingy with him or being a non-worker. Some people are just non-workers. Either way, you're actually cutting yourself off from the very thing you want. So yeah, right. Some of you have been riding your horses lately. I've heard some stories. Beautiful horse, but man, is this a hoss to ride? It's going to take a lot of effort. It's going to take a lot of testing, a lot of trial, but it's holy. That transaction between you and the Holy One, it'll be good. It'll be good in the end. All right, guys. So, like I say, it's a beautiful day here, drawing to an end very soon. Next week, I'm not sure what's going to happen, and I'll tell you why. Next week, we're going to have Gabriel Bello here. We'll be picking him up, I think, on Thursday. And he's going to be practicing with the River of Life musicians. And then on Shabbat, he's going to, with the band, present or do the praise and worship. And I think also he's going to give a little bit of his own testimony during that time. So I can't tell you whether we'll have the live stream or not. It depends on the events at the congregation. So I would like, if you can, put on your list to watch the service like you have before when I was teaching. Just do the same way. I would encourage you to watch the service. Remember, it starts at 10 a.m. Central Time here. 10 a.m. Central Time here. So if you can put that on your list, I think it'll be worthwhile. What I don't know is if we will continue doing some things at the congregation, or if we come back here afterward, if I might be able to do a little, I don't want to call it an interview, but I might be able to have him visit with you guys for a little bit. Either way, I think it'll be good. But we wouldn't be able to have the regular live stream at 4 p.m. Eastern if he stays up at River of Life. So just kind of be ready for either one. for sure, you can tune in and enjoy the service next Shabbat. The big question will be the live stream. So how will I let you know? How will you know next Shabbat whether there will be a live stream with a special guest? Check the newsletter, and it might be a brief one, just because of everything that I know is going to fall down toward the end of the week. Check the newsletter and check Facebook. The newsletter and Facebook, those would be the two avenues where you would be able to know yes or no on the live stream. All right, and get that reminder of where you can, if you want to tune in to the service, where you can get the link to do that. All right, so other than that, let me look at the calendar here. After that, there will be two Shabbats. There will be Shabbat the 25th and then Shabbat the 1st. And as far as I know, those will be the normal live stream. And then it's very likely that we will have a break in the month of February because I will be at Tamar Park in Israel. And the time difference is going to be significant because Israel's going to be 7 hours ahead of you. So that would be 11 o'clock at night. And I'm not at my best that late in the day. So I don't know. I might try to set something up while I'm there that month. But most likely we will not have a regular live stream unless I move it forward a little bit, which might be a train wreck if you're watching some other services and so forth. But we'll see. We'll see. If not, if we don't have the live streams, then probably it would start back March the 1st. Yeah, so 3 Shabbats in February, possibly not a live stream on Shabbat, but possibly, yes, if I can move it forward a little bit. Like I say, we'll see. A lot sometimes depends on the Wi-Fi down there in the desert. It's not as dependable as we'd like for it to be. But keep us in prayer for that trip. Didn't like the way we came out on October 8th, 7th, 8th last year. And so I feel like I need to go back and complete that circle since we're talking about the circle of the gifts. Sometimes you have to do things in the natural realm in order for there to be completion in spiritual realms. And I feel like that circle was open. Even though we were scheduled to leave when we left, with the war, it really felt like there were things left open. Especially, I think probably because so many people were left behind because so many flights were canceled. And I don't like that open-ended feeling that I've had ever since October 8th. And so I feel like going back perhaps will help that circle for me close up. And when you go to Israel, it's like you take your natural treasure, you take your hard-earned money, and you take your valuable time and you invest it in going to Israel. And there has never been a time that he didn't pour back out on me spiritual riches as a result of that. It's either in it might be, some great insight into the scriptures or my relationship with the Holy One. So it's often been a transformation in my relationship with him. Some people have remarked, like, when you come back from Israel, you're different. And it's for good, in a good way. Didn't get that feeling so much last time. Like I say, with October 7th/8th, it really felt open-ended, like there's something that has to be completed before I can declare that trip good. Often it's a sense of belonging. It's a sense of being home that you don't get anywhere else in the world. No matter where your home is, you can get that sense of home. I'm home. But you always leave a little bit of your soul there. And so eventually, when it's time to collect that soul and finally offer it up, you just feel like most of it's going to be in the land anyway. So if you haven't had a chance to go yet, the Sukkot trip should be posted in our newsletter probably next week, because the itinerary is worked out, the cost is worked out, the hotels are booked. What we're doing is tweaking out the description of the itinerary to make it more readable, more understandable. But if you'll check our newsletter next week, and plus it's got to be available for you to register. That's step 2. We've the 3 of us have to agree this is all right. And then that registration uploads onto the Blossoming Rose website. And so once we have that, you can get on there and actually register for the trip. That's when it's going to go. And I think that'll be done by next Friday's newsletter. Where if you want to go ahead and, get that commitment in there for Sukkot 25, we're that close. We're it's tweaking out a little bit of wording right now. And then getting Blossoming Rose to have that registration page there available for you. And so that, yes, on the verge, hoping the direction we're headed in right now continues to produce more peace. Although we know there's lots of other things that will occur before the ultimate peace comes. But if this is a window where we can get in there like Joshua and Caleb and say, we're going to put our feet in there, it's a good land. We know it's a good land. It's going to supply everything we need if we'll just believe. I don't want to be one of the other 10. I want to be one of the 2. Because I firmly believe if we put our feet in there with our natural resources, then in his time, he will pour out spiritual riches. You truly become a part of the land, I think, when you do that. All right, I'll let you go. I've talked long enough. I'm tired of listening to me. But Shabbat Shalom, and I will let you know by Friday how next Shabbat will go. Okay, so you've got the agenda for the end of February, kind of. All right, I love you guys. Love you very much. Please pray that there would be salvation in this situation, in the fires of California, especially, when I see little fawns just wandering down the road, a burning road, when I see burned pets, that gets to me. Not that I'm unsympathetic to the human beings, but we have a few more advantages. Animals just typically don't know what hit them. And so when people run off and leave them, that gets to me as well. So let's just pray that there would be divine intervention and no more loss of life. Bezrat Hashem. All right. Love you guys. See you next time.